Hello, Bobs. We're back with Anyone's Son, a true story by Roberta Roche with the killer Harry De La Roche Jr. 17. At Christ Lutheran Church at 12 o'clock, services were nearly over, and Pastor Roy Nilsson and his intern Ruth Mooring had just made their way to the back of the church. Just 1 week ago, they had greeted Harry, and now they were waiting to do the same thing, to do the same for the Thanksgiving weekend congregation. As we waited, a member of the congregation who had not been in church approached me from another direction and handed me a note, said Roy Nelson. Little did I know what I'd find. But the message that the pastor found read, "Some members of the De La Roche family are dead." Then there was the word murder, as Roy remembers today. Though in the confusion and the shock, it's hard for anyone to recall the specific words that were used. As soon as Roy got the message, he turned and went back to the pulpit to tell the congregation he'd just received word a church family was in trouble. And instead of greeting at the door, he had to go to their home. "Since I didn't know what happened, I didn't mention names," Roy explained. When he left, Ruth Mooring took over, and as the congregation filed out, more people heard the word murder. The question was, who was it? But Ruth couldn't answer that since she hadn't learned the name of the family. She got people out as fast as she could. Then she hurried to the church office, hoping she could see Roy before he left for the house. "He was on the phone when I got there," she related, "and he told me it was the De La Roches. I decided to stay at the church while Roy went to the house, still wearing his clerical collar. When he got there, he learned that Harry was with the Montvale police, so Roy lost no time in driving to the station in order to be with Harry. At the station, both John and Arden Greer were waiting restlessly for a chance to talk to Harry and let him know they were there, but whenever they asked to see him, it was maybe later, or he's busy now. Roy Nilsson received the same answer, so when he couldn't see Harry, he offered to accompany John Greer to Lodi to break the painful and tragic news to Honey and Ernie Ebneter. It's doubtful John Greer will ever forget that harrowing visit to Lodi, because when Ernie opened the door, he smiled. "Hi, John. How you been?" "Ernie, I have some terrible news," John had to say at once. 3 members of the De La Roche family have been killed in their beds. As soon as the words were out of his mouth and before Ernie could recover, Honey came in to see John, and as she hadn't heard what he'd said, he had to repeat to her, "Honey, I have terrible news. 3 members of the De La Roche family have been killed in their beds. Harry Sr. is one." Honey collapsed on the floor at once and started to scream and yell. Then Roy tried to do whatever he could to solace and comfort her. Soon it was obvious, however, that she needed medical help, so John and then Roy got on the phone and tried to get a doctor. After several calls, they were unsuccessful, but they finally located a physician who gave a prescription by phone. They also called Honey's brother, John De La Roche, in Paramus. In almost a matter of minutes, Big John and his son, Tough John, got to the Lodi house. While other family members were notified, John Greer and the pastor left Lodi to go back to the station to see Harry. They expected that surely, by this time, they could both talk to him. Arden Greer remained at the station while Roy and John were in Lodi, and for the hours the men were gone, she sat alone while time dragged. Once she caught a quick glimpse of Harry, but neither of them could speak. All kinds of things went through her mind. Then finally she asked Captain Hannah, "Is there any chance of a drug involvement anywhere in the family?" At first he didn't answer, then he said hesitantly, "Mrs. Greer, I wish I were home in slacks and in a position to talk to you as a friend of the family, but I'm on duty and in uniform and I can't answer you." "I have my answer," Arden replied, and then she went on thinking. One of the thoughts that went through her mind was, what will Harry do tonight? But soon the obvious decision was, we'll take him home with us. I mentioned that to Captain Hannah, she said, and I still recall his answer. He hesitated before he responded, and then he said quietly, "Maybe you won't have to make that decision." Well, John and Roy drove to Lodi and Arden sat alone. Life was busy at the crime scene as the officers' search progressed. Eventually, it reached the climax when at 12:15, Detective Smith of the New Jersey State Police and investigator Nass of the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office removed the two laundry baskets that sat in front of the attic door. Behind the door, the steps were steep, so the officers climbed up slowly. Then, when they got to the top of the stairs, they saw a brown metal locker directly to their left. There were cardboard boxes with Christmas decorations sitting on the top, and Detective Smith removed them to take a look inside. The time was approximately 12:25, and when investigator Nass looked into the box, he observed the feet of a human body. On further investigation, the officer saw a young boy stuffed into a locker, face down with his legs bent. There wasn't a shadow of a doubt that the hidden body was Ronnie, wearing a t-shirt, white undershorts, and socks. There was no gun beside him, and he wasn't a suicide since he couldn't have climbed into the locker, shut the lid on himself, and then put boxes on top. Instantly, both officers knew it was another murder, and soon the attic was as full of officers as the other two floors. Detective Sergeant Lycus was called to take pictures, and Detective Smith dusted the locker for latent fingerprints. He obtained two prints from the left end of the locker and one partial palm print from the right end. At 1:45, Dr. Denson returned to pronounce Ronnie dead. Rigor had begun, but the body hadn't cooled, and preliminary examinations indicated Ronnie had been shot once. The autopsy was suspended till 11 on Monday. Because of the attic's low ceiling and lack of working space, the locker with Ronnie's body was taken to the second-floor hallway. Detective Smith took a sample of blood from the locker, and Lycus removed several wood chips from the attic floor and stairway. The news that the missing Ronnie had been found at 12:25 was quickly relayed to the Montvale station, and 5 minutes later, Lieutenant Scarangella interrupted Harry's statement to reveal, outside of Harry's hearing, that Ronnie had been found. Well, there's the mystery of Ronnie. He's killed too. Which, I mean, you had to expect, but that's all. That's all for now. Bye, Burf.